When it comes to naming components in software, I like to say there are no correct names, only good or bad ones, depending on who you talk to. The key concept that falls out from that is to realize that what really matters is having a well understood pattern to the way you name things and locate them, and apply that pattern consistently. Now let's talk about some guidance for naming your views, view models, and model types. First, for views, most often your views will be implemented as user controls that will be hosted or contained within some UI container or parent view. Those views should generally be named with the suffix of view, with their name indicating what they contain or something about the action or use case that they support. However, you might also have cases where you're creating a top-level UI construct, such as a window, dialog, or page, and want to name the view with those as a suffix to indicate what kind of construct they are, and that's perfectly fine. One recommendation I do have, however, is that you should avoid naming something with a view suffix if it does not have a corresponding view model. That way you don't have to dig into the internals of a view to figure out if it is part of a view-view model pair. The name should tell you that straight away. For your view models, if you're following the guidance about naming views that I just covered, the majority of your views will have view at the end of their name. When that's the case, simply append model to the end of the view type name to come up with what its view model type should be named. As an example, a view named Customer Edit View would have a view model named Customer Edit View Model. If you have a view whose type name does not end in view, then simply append view model to the end of the view type name. An example of that would be if your main window has a view model, it could be called Main Window View Model. Basically, the beginning part of names of the view and view model should match, with only the suffix differentiating which is the view and which is the view model, but making it easy to associate them. When it comes to your model objects, those are usually just objects with properties to contain the data of the model. These kind of objects are also often called entities, but don't let that term confuse you and make you think they are necessarily associated with Entity Framework in any way. Entity is just a general term for a lightweight object that contains data and properties. In terms of naming them, name your model objects for the domain objects that they represent. So your model objects should have noun-based names like customer, order, patient, prescription, and so on. One last thing to consider is what to name classes that are wrappers for model objects. For example, assume you're given the requirement to present an order history for a customer in a table consisting of the product name, the order date, and the quantity of that item. But then you go look at your model object definitions and realize that you need to get the product name from the product object, the order date from the order, and the quantity from the order item. But you need a collection of something you can easily bind to from a grid. The solution, as discussed in the first module, is to wrap your model objects in a separate type that is like a helper to the view model. Some people end up appending view model to the end of type names of these kinds of objects. I would recommend you avoid that. Use some kind of entity name for the object and keep it so view models always have a view they're associated with. But to keep things clean and easy to understand, I would also locate these types somewhere else than where the model objects are defined, often side by side with the views and view models that they're servicing.